Hi, and welcome back to Weeby Kids. So in today's session, we're going to be looking at making a basic round with willow, hazel, dogwood, or even maybe some young ash saplings. So these go from being really small to being obviously much larger, and you can make them as big as you need to. It's a good material for working with for large structures as well. So don't feel limited by the scope of this creation today, because I'm choosing to make something that is much more manageable in size indoors so that you can actually see how to do this. Okay? For today's session, you're going to need to have some lengths of willow. I have 3 freshly cut from the garden. You can also use hazel, dogwood, or perhaps some young ash, some secateurs, scissors, and some string or garden twine. So when collecting your willow or your hazel, dogwood, or a young ash sapling, the reason you are going to be using them is because they are very full of water, and when they are young, they are still very pliable and bendy, which is fantastic. They hold the water well. And you can get them in all sorts of different thicknesses as well. Obviously, they come from the very thin, which is what you need if you're going to be working on something smaller, to something much thicker, which is what you're going to need if you're going to be working on a much larger structure that needs more strength building into it. So first of all, you're going to get your pieces of, well, in this case, it's willow, and you're just going to strip off the branch parts which have the leaves, unless you're leaving them on for a crown. So you see, and you're going to do this with all of the pieces that you're going to be using to make your willow round. Once you have stripped your willow, you will see that I have also cut my ends at an angle, and that tends to make them a little bit tidier when you are creating your round. To ensure that your willow is ready to be worked with, use your thumbs, and it might, in fact, if they are large pieces, you're going to be using your full hands. But here you can just use your thumbs if they're nice and small and pliable, just to pre-prepare your willow for the bending that it's going to be doing. And as you can see, this piece is nice and young and supple and very pliable. And we're just going to do that with each of the pieces. And you're going to line up your 2 pieces of willow a little bit apart from each other, and you're just going to start twisting just to give it some kind of structure that is a little bit stronger than the one piece. And once they are wound around each other, you can place them together in a circle, or a bit like a fish, I suppose. Okay, and if you place your hand through your structure, you can grab your ends and weave them through and round so that all your ends are being tucked. Okay, so that you have a nice small round. As you can see, the thicker ends may stick up at this point, and perhaps you will need to trim them. Use your 3rd piece and look at where your ends are, 1, 2, find the 3rd staggered place for it. And then it's going to be a case of wrapping your entire piece of willow through and round your structure to give it some strength. And as you can see, this piece is nice and pliable and works very easily because it is freshly cut from the garden. There we go. But you will find willow out and about on walks, so you can also collect some from there too. So this isn't something that you have to have in plentiful supply at home. There we go. And as you can see there, I have a nice round structure. If there are any ends that you wish to remove because they're sticking out, just take a pair of secateurs and with care, make sure that you cut off your excess, again at an angle, because when they dry, they tend to then fit the shape far better. Next, cut yourself some pieces of twine or string that you can use to hold your structures in place. Now, I tend to use 2 or 3 of these. My structure is actually quite solid, well, just as it is. But if I would like to keep this structure together over time so that I could maybe use it again and again, say perhaps for a door wreath, then holding it in place is often a good way of doing this. Identify where the loose ends were, as they tend to be the ones that come undone. Wrap your twine into place, and with a very simple overhand knot, so left over right and right over left, just tie the structures into place. Now, I tend to do this in about 3 different places. This time, once you have them all there, if you have any loose ends, you can just trim those with a pair of scissors. And just be aware that over time, sometimes you will have to replace the garden twine or the string and obviously tighten them up again. But this is the basic recipe, as it were, to making a willow or a hazel round for a crown, a wreath, and many other basic structures. So to create one of these on obviously that much larger scale, it may take a little bit more time than the smaller one that I've just demonstrated to you. Be aware of that. Some of the thicker willow or different branches that you may work with can take a little bit more working in order to get them to be pliable. And you'll notice that you do need to use a substantial amount of twine or string just to make sure that they are held tightly in place. And over time, this is one I made some time ago, these will need replacing in order to make sure that it all holds nice and strong. So good luck making your willow rounds. I look forward to seeing what wonderful things that you create with these, and I'd love to see what you do create with them in the comments below. Take care. Bye from Weeby Kids.